All right, moving on, India's Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri has held a lengthy discussion with Afghanistan's acting Foreign Minister, Mawlawi Amir Muttaqi in Dubai. These discussions are the first open talks that the two sides have held since the Taliban returned to power in Kabul in 2021. Bilateral ties largely remain dormant since then, and India is yet to recognize the Taliban regime in Afghanistan. But overtures began as early as 2022, and in this landmark meet, signifying a thaw in ties, we underscored the importance of historic, civilizational, and cultural ties with Afghanistan. Dialogue ranged from humanitarian and developmental assistance, as well as trade and commerce, sports, cultural ties, regional and strategic security were also discussed. Additionally, Afghanistan assured the Indian delegation of pursuing a balanced and economy-oriented foreign policy. Afghan delegation also expressed hope for strengthening diplomatic relations and creating facilities related to visas in the meeting. India pledged further humanitarian support to Afghanistan. Until now, New Delhi has already shipped 50,000 metric tons of wheat, 300 tons of medicines, 27 tons of earthquake relief, and 40,000 litres, 100 million polio doses, 1.5 million doses of COVID vaccine, 11,000 units of hygiene kits. But what's most important is that India and Afghanistan also focused on the Chabahar Port in Iran, which acts as a key supply route for goods. Apart from bypassing Pakistan, the port is a gateway to the international north-south transport corridor. It is located just 170 kilometers away from the Gwadar port, operated by China and Pakistan. What's important is that India can carry out humanitarian operations from this port if the need arises. India's engagement with Afghanistan comes at a time when the Taliban's ties with Pakistan are strained. Kabul's ties with Islamabad have been strained over allegations that it is harboring TTP terrorists. In fact, last month, the Pakistani military carried out airstrikes against in Afghanistan border province. The airstrikes destroyed 7 villages and killed at least 46 people, including several civilians. As Pakistan grapples with its border crisis, does the strategic shift in South Asia spell out further trouble? We'll talk about this with our guests. Ambassador Suresh Kumar Goyal, former diplomat, joins us on the show. Major General Dhruv Katoch, Director of the India Foundation, also with us on the program. Mr. Sumit Peer, political commentator, joins us on the platform here as well. And Pathakrit Pine, international affairs expert, also with us on the program. Thank you, gentlemen, for being a part of this conversation. Ambassador Goyal, I'll begin with you, sir. Sir, how do you look at this overture, or if we can call it that? How do you look at this outreach on behalf of India towards Pakistan? The most of the world wants to relegate Afghanistan. Most of the world does not agree with the treatment the Taliban metes out to its civilian population, specifically women. What do you make of this thaw in relationship, and is this going to help us against Pakistan in any way?
Well, let me put it this way, that even after Taliban established its government in Kabul, even though we didn't have the diplomatic relations, so to say, with Taliban-led government, in the sense that we didn't open our embassy there, but we have had people going to Afghanistan to look at our own humanitarian projects and the development work that we have been carrying out before. So we had never completely broken away from Afghanistan. And I'm making a distinction here between the regime in Kabul and our relationship with Afghanistan, in the sense that we have continued to be involved in the development related work, humanitarian work. You mentioned about the amount of assistance that we have given to Afghanistan, including the polio doses, etc., and the grain, etc., all kinds of assistance that we have provided to Afghanistan, even during the time when we didn't have the diplomatic relations. In that sense, what happened in Dubai, the meeting between Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri and the Deputy Foreign Minister of Afghanistan, is to provide a more, I wouldn't call it diplomatic or formal, but a kind of higher level, a slightly higher level the shape or form to what was going on between the two countries. Now, it is important, not just from the point of view of the recent developments between Pakistan and Afghanistan, But from the point that Afghanistan has always been important for our own Central Asia policy. Central Asia is an important region for India. Please remember our own history, but also the fact that even at times when we were looking at our own anti international terrorism related activities, campaign policies, Central Asia always played an important role. Tajikistan uh, is one country to mention, Kyrgyzstan, Kyrgyz Republic. So, from that point of view, our relationship or our talks uh, with Afghanistan at the level of Foreign Secretary uh, is articulation of that important part of the strategic dynamics, and also the fact that Iran Chabahar Port will continue to play an important role in our regional policies. Therefore, while at one level we can talk about as a developments between Afghanistan and Pakistan, but independent of that, Central Asia, Iran, and access into Central Asia through Chabahar and Afghanistan remain a very important part of our foreign policy. I will stop here for the time being.
All right. Okay. Well, it's an important part of India's policy. General Katoch, how do you look at this thawing of attitudes, if I can call it, between these two nations? Obviously, when it comes to Afghanistan, there are a lot of blurred lines in terms of the ideology that India submits to and the ideology that Afghanistan follows. Could that also be a flashpoint in this association in the future?
Oh, thank you, Vineet. Vineet, when we are looking at foreign policy, I don't think we can, look into any situation in black and white terms. There will be multiple shades of grey, and our relationship with Afghanistan for the moment really exemplifies that sort of a relationship. Now, as Ambassador Goel has already stated, our policy with respect to Afghanistan over the past few years under Taliban rule has been really to benefit the people of Afghanistan. And obviously, if the Afghan Taliban is ruling as of now, then we have to deal with them whichever way we have to do, whichever way we have to do so. But that being said, it is important for us actually to maintain some level of a contact. But I believe that even when the Afghan government took over, when the Taliban took over and the Americans withdrew, there were at some level there were unofficial contacts still taking place between us and the Afghan Taliban, though we removed our embassy from there. And I think those contacts have remained. It is important for us to maintain those contacts because in the larger goal which we are looking at, we are dealing. Our relationship is with the people of Afghanistan. That is one aspect of it. But on the while Ambassador Gold didn't delve on this particular issue on the terrorism front, I think that is important to India also. You see, the other aspects are important, but here too, when we are looking at terrorism, we have got that assurance that we will not find Afghan soil being used as a base for anti-India activities by Pakistan. Um, that of course is not going to happen now with the with the relations breaking between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and especially after the horrific bombing of innocent civilians, women and children by the Pakistan Air Force on Afghani soil. But I think as far as I'm concerned, I think it is a good development because the meeting with the ambassador, our foreign secretary, with the deputy foreign minister of Afghanistan, that is a good development because we can in a sense get the assurance from Afghanistan that they will not do any activity in their soil which is against Indian interests or against India's security interests. Secondly, I think Afghanistan has got a lot to gain from India. Over the last decade or last 2 decades, India has been very, very prominent in looking after certain interests, especially the economic interests of the people of Afghanistan. And the last point I wish to make was just recently, one of our colleagues had gone to Afghanistan and spent 2 weeks there. Uh, in his interaction with various sections of the people, what came out starkly was the goodwill which the people of Afghanistan have with the people of India. I think that is a positive which nobody can take away. That has existed ever since 2000, and it continues to remain strong. So I will say that Indian policy to this effect is positive, and perhaps we should continue on these lines without formally getting into recognition of the Afghanistan government, the Taliban government, but continue to work with them. Vineet.
Pir, should we continue to work with the Taliban government? And do you think that human rights crisis that continues to prevail in Afghanistan, and something which is being criticized and admonished by the whole world, is going to make any difference in the way we treat Afghanistan or deal with Afghanistan?
Vinny, thanks for having me on your show. Well, look, with Afghanistan, we never scuttled our relation. There was always a residual relation which was always on. In diplomacy, you say when you shut down the door, but keep a small window open. That's what exactly we did. Look, there are 5 points I want to make which are very important here. This meeting was organized in Dubai. So when you do a meeting in a third country, that means a lot of organization needs to be there. So you wanted this meeting to be seen. This meeting is happening when Prime Minister Modi criticized the airstrikes of Pakistan into Afghanistan, which killed 46 innocent civilians. This meeting happens when Pakistan are claiming they are going to get Wakhan corridor and their army got whacked. This meeting happens in last 2 days. Pakistani army lost more than 3 dozen people in Balochistan and in Turbat, 2 days. This happens in a time when Afghani Taliban are not agreeing to any Durian line. This happens in a time when Afghani Taliban have declared they are going to attack all the interest of Fauji Foundation of the army's establishment wherever they are in Pakistan, and I've told them that everybody should leave any assets of Faujis or army of Pakistan that will be targeted in 3 months. This happens in a time when we were in a situation wherein Imran Khan told us we have strategic depth in Afghanistan. We have our Muslim brothers there, and they are just bombing up to us. Now, with these things happening, which is keeping the Pakistan army occupied and all, forget the strategic depth, forget using Taliban against us. They are covering their backside vis-a-vis Taliban. So now, when you do the meeting in this point of time, when we have immense goodwill on the ground, when our foreign minister secretary is meeting them, and it's in a third country, you are sending a very, very clear message of association with Taliban and dissociation with Pakistan. Now, regarding Chabahar Port, it's a very important point. We need in Iran, you have 5 major ports. 4 are under sanctions. There is only one port which is not under sanctions, that is Chabahar Port, because of us. Now, if I look at the geopolitics of the world, an invasion of Iran by America is on the cards. It will happen today, tomorrow, jab tak. Now, I know that Chabahar Port is being used for a lot of nefarious activities by Iran because that is the only port where the sanctions are not there. We know it, Iran knows it, America knows it, everybody knows it. In due course of time, the situation in Chabahar will change. I think Mr. Misri also updated the respected minister from Afghanistan that things are going to change in Chabahar. When the things change in Chabahar, how will our aid, our assistance, and our goodwill reach the people of Afghanistan? That will be a $1 million question that has to be all worked out, because there will be problem in Chabahar. It's a matter of time. As far as Gwadar is concerned, we need one important point. Gwadar is the most unoccupied port in the whole world. Sabse nikamma port. It is the port which has the least traffic in the whole world. It's a Chinese military base. It's not a commercial port. So with these changes in the geopolitics, I think we had a right meeting. We have kind of signaled our inclination to them. They have come for the meeting. They have signaled their liking for them. So this meeting, I don't know how much we are going to celebrate, but the people in Pakistan, और कहते हैं ना हिंदी में, खून के आंसू बह रहे होंगे उनके. When they are fighting and killing each other, Indians are hugging and meeting, and we are talking of really renewing our ties, renewing our projects and things like that. I think it's a great diplomatic move. Look at the timing. Timing is impeccable.
Timing is important. Well, the timing is also important, Pathakrit, and Donald Trump is going to be resuming office in just a few days. What do you make of that timing and India's outreach towards the Taliban?
I mean, everything is not done by keeping the timing of when Donald Trump comes to power. I think India has its own foreign policy, and that we have to keep in mind. Secondly, as has been rightly pointed out by other respected panelists, that we have never disowned Afghanistan. Even if you have a lot of problems with Taliban, yes, India does have a lot of problems with Taliban in terms of how they treat women. But even if you want improvements in Taliban, in Afghanistan, you have to engage them. The entire culture of the West of sanctioning and disowning a country, that is something that we have always been against. Prime Minister Modi has always talked about he has protested against the unilateral sanctions that many of the Western countries impose. So yes, we do have problems in the way Taliban governs, but at the same time, Afghanistan is too strategic a country to be left alone in difficult times. Because if you look at what Pakistan is doing in Bangladesh, there is this Chanakya theory of foreign policy called the Mandala theory. So invariably, you have to improve your relationship with Afghanistan. Firstly, to ensure, and mind you, we are not the only country. Russia recently took Taliban out of the terror list. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Russia is also supplying Taliban regime with air defense systems. One of the key reasons for that is that Taliban is actually fighting it out against the ISIS in Afghanistan. So given the turmoil that you have in Pakistan, given the problem that Pakistan is creating in Bangladesh, it's time that we make our moves. And I think it's all in good wisdom. I think also Pakistan has been trying to create these allegations that, India is supplying Taliban with a lot of weapon systems. I mean, India does not need to supply anything to Taliban. Pakistan's good friend America has left behind everything enough to actually wage a big war against Pakistan. So they are pretty well capable with the American weapon systems. For us, humanitarian issue is something that we have always considered important, and therefore engaging with Taliban is important. I mean, the West now have sanctions on Taliban. We all know how they engaged with Taliban during the American occupation in Afghanistan. They had these meetings in Qatar. So I see no problem in talking. I mean, talking is fine. And at the same time, I also reiterate this point that Taliban does not have any expansionist agenda. Taliban has been territorial. Taliban, yes, we have a problem with how they govern, but whatever they do within Afghanistan. They have never proclaimed that they want to convert India into another Taliban regime. So I think there are areas of convergence, there are areas of divergence, there are areas of status quo, and I think keeping aside the areas of divergence, in certain areas of convergence, we need to talk. We absolutely need to talk. So I think in the larger dimension of how things are shaping up in South Asia, how things are moving in terms of in Pakistan, I think it's a very critical move, and I completely support it. Humanitarian aid, even if you actually give it, you have to ensure that it is, reach the last man. And so I think communication. I'm sure those communications have been going on for a long time. It's just for the first time, perhaps we are physically looking at it. The last but not the least, even if you want to change how Taliban looks at the world and how they deal with governance in Afghanistan, you need to talk to them and say that certain things over a period of time must change. A lot of people in Afghanistan also do not like Taliban, but at the same time, there are areas where they have done certain things. Poppy cultivation in Afghanistan has drastically come down after the Taliban took over. Less than 10% of Afghanistan land was used for poppy cultivation before the Americans stepped in. When the Americans were there for 20 years, it went up to 93%. Today, it has considerably come down. So when India is waging a major war against narcotics, when you see fencing is being done in the Indo-Myanmar border, when you see we have actually literally fighting a war against drug syndicates in Northeast, and a large amount of drugs are being confiscated in India as well. A lot of good work is being done by the government, Ministry of Home Affairs, and agencies like NCB and NIA. So one of the key area from where the poppy cultivation happens, apart from certain areas in Northeast part of India where there is an issue, it's Afghanistan. So if you have to break this narco terror syndicate, you need to talk to Taliban, and Taliban has been doing quite a bit of good work in terms of reducing poppy cultivation. So I think it's all in good faith it is being done. But to expect tomorrow onwards everything will be hunky-dory, I think all are mature enough to expect that. I reiterate, we have differences with Taliban, and those differences will remain, but there are certain common areas as well, and we are working on that. Back to you.
All our guests, starting with Ambassador Goel. Ambassador Goel.
Vinny, The argument is often given, and I think I'm questioning the common wisdom here really, that we should not be establishing diplomatic relations with Taliban-led Afghanistan because of anti-women policies of Taliban and the way Taliban is dealing with the human rights situation, etc., etc., etc. Now, the fact is, when the USA was dealing with Taliban, were they actually caring for how Taliban dealt with women? They didn't. They were looking at their own strategic and national interest. And so must we. We must be looking at our own national interest and the security interest in terms of how to deal with Taliban and Afghanistan. Number one. Number two, as the Patikrit said, I mean, the best way to deal with the women's rights protection in Afghanistan would be to actually talk to Taliban, would be to actually ensure that the policies of Taliban-led government harmonize with whatever own stated policies the women's rights are. It could be a policy of linked incentives and disincentives, as we do often in other cases. And lastly, when Taliban was given access to Afghanistan to form the government, it happened because the Americans had given up on Afghanistan's previous government. It is Americans, and despite the persuasion from various people, various countries, that they should not be doing so, they withdrew from Afghanistan, leaving Afghanistan to chaos. And I think we, as a democratic country, we as a country which is a regional power, if not global power at the moment, has a responsibility to make sure that those chaos do not percolate down to other countries and affect their own governance, which is what would happen if Afghanistan people particularly, they were to really face growing problems in terms of development funding. And that is what is happening from the Western countries. They're withdrawing funds. Sanctions have not helped any country so far or helped achieve the policy aims. I don't think they will do that in Afghanistan. We have to engage with Pakistan. We have to work for the betterment of people of Pakistan and ensure that the government in Afghanistan recognizes the value of interaction and engagement. Vineet.
General Katoch. General Katoch.
Very frankly, I think recognition as far as the Taliban is concerned may not suit India's long-term interests, because there are various groups within Afghanistan whom we also need to support. But we must engage with the Taliban. I see no reason why we should not engage and continue our robust engagement as far as the population of Afghanistan is concerned. India, I think, is the only country which has that amount of goodwill which no other country has amongst the people of Afghanistan, and we cannot let that go. So that doesn't mean that we get too cozy or something with the Taliban, but certainly deal with them. And as far as I am concerned, there is no reason for India to interfere in their internal affairs. How they treat their women or their children, etc., that is a different issue. That is up to their people to deal with their own government. But as far as we are concerned, while not supporting those actions, we should certainly carry out actions to support the people of Afghanistan. And I think in its own way, the government of India is doing that, and I support it.
Pathikrit?
Well, two important points. If a choice has to be given as to who should, control Afghanistan, whether it is ISIS or Taliban, then invariably we prefer, in spite of all the differences, we would prefer Taliban and not ISIS. Secondly, I think societal changes are coming in many parts of Middle East as well. There are social reforms happening in Saudi Arabia as well. So I think it may take time. Yes, we should not interfere, but at the same time, we should also voice our reservation. And I'm sure over a period of time, some improvements will happen in Afghanistan as well. I think, as has been rightly mentioned, we should continue our engagements with them. That doesn't mean that we agree to everything that they say. That is the important thing. And the areas of divergence, convergence, status quo is part of foreign policy and foreign discussions. So banning, disowning, sanctioning, isolating this entire culture of the West has not yielded anything. And so we don't want that to happen anymore. Engagement is important. Back to you.
On that note, I would like to thank all my guests who were joining us on this important debate.